So, hey guys, I want to ask you, how do you feel about being in Sofia for the second time and you, Bridget, for the first time?
It's very special to come back to Sofia with the show. Normally on the tour, we only visit a city once. So when we found out that our promoters wanted to bring us back, it's a very special feeling because it makes you feel like the show is a success here the first time and that the people want to see it again. It's a lovely feeling, and it's a great way for us to continue the tour. And we have some new members of the cast and new members of the orchestra who are joining the show for the first time. So we have a nice mix of people coming for their first time and those returning.
And yeah, this is my first time in Sofia, Bulgaria, so I'm thrilled. It's such an adventure to, a new culture, a new city, and it's just wonderful to be part of a beautiful company who, they obviously loved the show last time, so I'm really excited to be here. So thank you for having us.
Well, thank you as well. I was going to ask you, how do you feel about playing exactly your characters in this play? I have read that the Phantom in Phantom of the Opera was your dream character. So can you tell us more about it? Have you ever felt like him in your life, or have you had a similar situation?
For sure, this was a dream of mine for a long time. I have a long history with the show. It was one of my first West End jobs. When I joined, I was just in the chorus, and then I became the Raoul understudy, and then I played Raoul. So it's been like a 15-year relationship with the show, but I always had in the back of my mind that one day I would love to have a go at the Phantom. And the most exciting thing for me about playing him is that he is not like me. Raoul was like me. He and I were quite close, but the Phantom is a huge challenge as an actor and a singer. He is, in many ways, he's like a child. He's a man who never learned how to interact with other human beings. He spent his life alone, an outcast, and then he creates this character. He invents the Phantom of the Opera as a way of having confidence and a way of interacting with people. But of course, none of it's real. Who he really is a lost and lonely man who wants to be loved and wants to be accepted by others. But he goes about it the wrong way because he creates this character that makes people frightened of him and makes people sort of retreat from him. And through his relationship with Christine, he begins to learn that he can be more himself and that he's made many mistakes along the way. So becoming him physically, finding his voice, singing him, it's a big challenge, but that's what makes it really rewarding,
And for me, similar to Nadim's journey, Christine was always my dream role, and I started in the West End in the ensemble as swing, and then made my way up to understudy, and then played the role, and have since played it in a few different countries like Australia and then Saudi last year. And I think in terms of a character, I feel like there are definitely similarities I have to Christine. I would like to think and hope that I am emotionally intelligent, because I think she's fiercely wise beyond her years in terms of her emotional capacity. And she really has an inner strength about her, which I also hope to have. So I've found her in many ways quite easy to tap into, because she's just very human. She's very vulnerable. She's on a journey to finding herself. She's processing things. She's healing. She's learning. And she's really complex, like we all are, I suppose. So it really is a joy to play someone so interesting and real and compassionate, I think. Yeah.
Well, that's lovely. Other thing that it's interesting to me is, so there are going to be 9 plays of it. How do you manage to keep your energy isn't it exhausting? Like 9 times in a row from the 29th to 5th of September. I mean, isn't it exhausting? How do you manage with this?
I think that the energy and the stamina that comes with a role like this or a show like this is something that you develop gradually over many years. You know, when we study to become professional performers, our training involves many long days, you know, 9 a.m. till 6 p.m. every day, singing class, acting class, movement class. And your body just develops ways of, like, I suppose it's like being an athlete. I think that's fair. You know, like if you're training for the Olympics, to begin with, you maybe train for 2 hours a day, then 4 hours a day, then 8 hours a day, and then, you know, you develop this over many years. And as long as you look after yourself and you get as much sleep as you can and you hydrate as much as you can, you have to just trust that your body has developed these skills over many years. You know, I think it's very difficult for someone at the beginning of their career. They need time to learn what it's like to do 8 performances in 1 week. But when you've been doing it for 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, you're used to it. It's like, it's not something you can pick up quickly. But also the rehearsals, I think, I don't know how you feel about it, but I think rehearsals are more tiring. Because in a rehearsal, you might do one song 4 or 5 times in a row, or you might spend 4 hours on one scene. Whereas in the show, in front of the audience, you do everything once. And if you're prepared physically and you warmed up, then you should be okay. Fingers crossed.
I would say, yeah, I agree with everything Nadim says. I think it's just treating yourself with care and doing all the basic things to keep yourself well. So I find meditation and breath work really help to keep everything kind of in check, and sleeping well, just as you would to look after yourself for anything at high performance level. So like as Nadim says, like an athlete, treating your mind, body and soul with real care. And I suppose there are sacrifices to be made. Like in the last week, I've not gone out much. You know, I've really just been rehearsing and then coming back, eating and sleeping. So yeah, everything comes at a cost, doesn't it? So you miss out on a few more things perhaps. But yeah, I agree. Once it's up and running, it's much easier. Rehearsals are hard because you're repeating things a lot, working them in. Once it's up and running, it's a bit like a well-oiled machine, isn't it?
What do you do in your spare time when you have the time, when you're not working, when you're not acting, singing? Yeah. What makes you happy besides of this?
Good question.
I think every one of us is different, and we will all have different interests and hobbies and pastimes. But for me, I just like to try and leave my work at the theatre. You know, I find that when I'm in a show, it changes the music I want to listen to. I don't want to listen to things that I can sing along to, for example. Whereas when I'm not in a show, I'll be in my car singing. You know, it's like, it's sort of keeping as much of a balance as you can in your lifestyle so that you save as much energy as you need to for the show. My favorite things to do outside of the theatre are, I like fitness, I like the gym, I like running, I like walking, going outdoors, which is the complete opposite of being in a dark theatre. So it's, you know, it's about, or in a lair, yeah, an underground cave with a mask on. So it's about balance for me, you know, and I try and, you know, Bridget said earlier about we make sacrifices. You know, when we work in a show like this or when we're traveling on a tour, we will miss our friends, our family. We won't be able to go to people's birthdays or weddings, and you know, we miss these life things because we're working in the evening and we're working when other people are on their free time. So I think also using the downtime to connect with your loved ones and talk about things that, you know, are not to do with your career. You know, absolutely. A lot of our friends and family don't do this, and when we're with them, it's nice to talk about their lives and other things, so that when you come to the theatre, it feels exciting and fresh, and you're ready to get to work. That's how I feel.
Yeah, absolutely. I think everything Nadim said as well. I personally love playing tennis. I love spending time in my local parks in Melbourne, seeing friends, reading. I love poetry. Just, yeah, I suppose those are the things that make me me. And they're unrelated to musical theatre and to work, I suppose. Learning new things, listening to podcasts, watching silly shows, you know, just things that connect you back to yourself. FaceTiming friends, because, you know, we're traveling a lot of the time. So, yeah, I think connection's really important to remind yourself of who you are away from the work. I think it's really important. Yeah, to stay grounded. Yeah.
What's your favorite song or a piece of music?
In the show?
No.
Or just in general? Oh, wow.
Big question. Oh.
What a great question.
Yeah, both of the things.
Can I start with the show?
Yeah, of course.
Because I know the answer to that one. I don't have to think. My favorite part of the show is the final scene. No spoilers. I'm not going to give spoilers. But the final the final scene of Phantom is so intelligently written. It's like the first time the three main characters, you know, we've been following these three characters for 2 hours, and they very rarely exist together. There's a couple of moments where we see them together for like a minute.
Yeah.
But essentially, it all comes to this one moment where the three of them are completely, we've used this word a lot, vulnerable. They are, in the Phantom's case, the mask is off. Raoul is there. Christine is there. And it's the three of them pouring all of their emotion and all of the things we've seen building to this one scene.
Yeah.
And then in terms of the music itself, you hear lots of the melodies from the show that have come before, but you hear them in a new way, with more darkness, with more emotion, with more aggression. And it's like, you know, when you're watching it, that whatever happens at the end of this scene, these three lives are never going to be the same again. They've lost the status and control that they had before, and I think Christine suddenly has all the power and the status, whereas up to that point you have two men in their own ways trying to look after her and love her and protect her, and it suddenly all changes, and it's like 15 minutes of high drama, and then suddenly it's over, and you know their lives are changed forever. So that, I think, is the best part of the show. In terms of my favorite music, it's kind of like what I said earlier. I like listening to music in my free time that is not musical theatre, because that's my job. And I think my favorite style of music is classic rock. You know, groups like Queen, The Who, Pink Floyd. I like guitar music. Yeah, it's interesting to say that out loud, because that's not how I perform at all. But maybe that's why I like it. It's detached from my job.
I think from the show, can I pick two bits? I love a bit in the second act. It's a manager's scene, and it's called Twisted Every Way. It's a little section of music that I just feel is suspended and magical, and there's so much space, and it's just it gets me in the heart. I love it so much. So that's sort of in the middle of Act 2, and then also Past the Point of No Return. Absolutely love it. Love to sing it. Love to listen to it. Yeah. In terms of music in my spare time, I would say I love David Bowie, but also I'm really into like folk music at the moment. Like any good lyrics. Yeah, I guess again with the poetry thing. Probably a favourite song at the moment that I keep playing on repeat is Death with Dignity by Sufjan Stevens. Yeah, really love it.
So both of you have amazing taste in music. And what was the most challenging part in building your characters and about the rehearsals. So you said already that it's hard rehearsing something 5 times in a row. But what was the most challenging thing? And let me add to the question: what is the thing that you like the most about the Phantom of the Opera? Like in terms of scenography or directing, or what was the most interesting to you in building the play?
Okay. With the character, the thing that makes it the hardest is also the thing that makes it the easiest. Let me explain what I mean by that. The Phantom, when you play the Phantom, you spend 2 hours before the show in makeup, having this very incredibly designed prosthetic. It's made of silicone, and it attaches to your skin with glue, and it moves with your face, but it covers literally half of your head. And then that gets painted, and then the mask gets attached to that, and then you have a wig. And so you have this very big process before the show starts. And then obviously during rehearsals, you have to rehearse that. So some of the cast will have free time, but you have to go to the theatre 2 or 3 hours before. And when you're tired, that's difficult. But then as soon as it starts happening and you're in the chair, all you think is, I am so lucky that this is my job. Like, anyone who has played these iconic characters, I feel like we consider ourselves very privileged. And you look in the mirror and straight away, you're not you anymore. You know, you're like, okay, so this was hard work, but look, I am now a different person. And that makes it very easy to feel different when you walk on stage. The other side of it that's difficult is the vocal challenge of the Phantom, because he's such a big personality and he's so over the top. You can't really hold back, and you have to find ways of, it's not shouting, but you have to make the audience feel you're shouting. You have to find a technique that is safe, that you can do 8 times a week for a long time, for 1 year, 18 months, 2 years, you know, whatever it might be. And not going too far that you damage your voice and that you need to take time off the show. But once you figure out how to do it, it's really fun and really rewarding. And then to answer the second question about the show itself, I just think it's one of those shows where all the ingredients came together in a really perfect way when they created it. It's visually stunning. It's a period show, so the set and the costumes and the wigs, it takes the audience to another world. And the music, because it's set in an opera house, you have a really lovely opportunity to hear classical music, but then also musical theatre. You hear different vocal styles, you see ballet dancing, you see acting, you see comedy. It just has a bit of everything. And at the heart of it, there is this story about, you know, Phantom is, I think, often missold or misinterpreted as a love story between the Phantom and Christine. It's much more complicated than that. There is a love story between Christine and Raoul, which is a romantic love story. And then there's this very complex love story between the Phantom and Christine, which in my opinion is only very briefly potentially romantic. I think I always found it interesting, and maybe it's because I played Raoul as well, so I've seen both sides. But from Act 1 onwards, Christine is actually telling everyone, I'm frightened of him, keep me away from him, I'm scared of him. And so whatever love there is between them, it's more like mentor-student, it's more friendship, it's more confused. And I think it's really interesting how that story develops throughout the show. And ultimately, is like an unrequited love. You know, he loves her in a way that ultimately he learns can't be possible. And I think that's what makes the audience moved at the end. It's that many of us have loved someone who we couldn't be with. And I think the audience is full of people feeling that at the end of every show. Because if you care about Christine, you can't really want her to be romantically involved with a murderer, a guy who plays mind games, a guy who spies on her, a guy who kidnaps her. It is that obvious, you know, when you really think about it. But because the music is so beautiful, people just get carried away with the emotion of it. And I think that's really interesting. And you know, I hope that answers the question of what is the thing about it that's most impressive. For me, it's that you watch this story and you care about a man who does so many bad things because maybe he's been damaged by the rest of us. He's been damaged by society and damaged by the world because of his disfigurement. It's much more complicated than the surface level. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Sorry if it was a bit waffly.
No, it's good. So the first question was, what was the hardest thing about rehearsals?
Yeah, about building the character.
Building the character.
Besides the exhaustion.
Yeah, I suppose it's just, it takes time, doesn't it, to build a character. So, because Nadim and I have been involved in the show for such a long time now, we've had the privilege of just letting things sit and sink in, and had the pleasure of watching many different people play the roles. So we've like learnt from others. And so we've had the luxury of time, haven't we, really, to develop what we think and feel about these complex humans. So I suppose that is the tricky thing, is to really get into the psyche of someone else. But it just takes time. And so probably when I first started playing Christine many years ago, she's probably a little bit different now, to how I play it now, because I'm different. And also I've discovered different things along the way. So I think we've been in a pretty fortunate position, haven't we?
Absolutely.
And different input from different companies and thoughts from directors, and it's been really wonderful. So challenging, but such a journey, that I felt very, very honoured to be part of. And what makes the Phantom of the Opera so impressive as a story, I think, as Nadim said, it's the combination of everything. It's that music that hits you in the gut and soul, combined with the story that I feel like, just as a human on the earth, you can relate to, because we all just want to be seen and loved and heard, don't we? And feel connected and feel intimacy and emotional closeness with others. And so I think seeing that struggle in the Phantom, and seeing Christine's compassion, seeing her journey, her strength, seeing all these very vulnerable human people on stage, you can relate to that, can't you? So I feel like it's just, it's timeless in terms of a story. And then you add in the beauty of the set, the costumes, the lighting, the music, the orchestra, it's pure magic, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I think it will just, and that's why it's seen through decades and still hits people, in the heart.
I want to ask you, what is your favorite city that you have visited while playing the Phantom of the Opera, or favorite theater which you have acted in?
That's a very good question. I have to say Sophia for city.
Yeah.
This city is really beautiful because it combines like things that are familiar from Europe and the Mediterranean, and I'm from Lebanon, and there are things here that remind me of Beirut, which is where my family's from, and it's like and the sun is always shining.
It's true.
The food is great, the people are great, and you wanted us to come back for a second time, so
it's nice to be
it's very
wanted,
special. This theatre is the biggest one we've performed in, which is incredible in terms of the size of the audience and the response at the end of the show. It's very overwhelming, but it's also very challenging to play in a theatre this big because, from anywhere you sit in the audience, we are very small. So we have to work differently to try and hit the back of the theatre and reach the audience. Whereas some theatres we play, maybe there's only 1,000 seats or 1,500 instead of 3,000 to 4,000. And so everyone is closer, and that changes how you perform. Because if you do the same performance in both, in the smaller theatre, you might look like you're over the top or you're too big. Here you can look too small, that people think you're not working hard. So you have to adapt wherever you go, to the size of the auditorium. But the nicest thing about touring is that everywhere you visit is very different, and it keeps the show alive and fresh, and it changes you know, when we do the show in London, for example, we will sign a 1-year contract and we will perform 8 times a week, over 6 days for a year. And yes, you have vacation, you have time off, you know, to break that up. But essentially, you're doing the same thing in the same building every day for a year. Whereas when you tour, it's a real treat that every few weeks you go home and you have a quick rest, and then you go back, but it's a different city, a different theatre, a different language. And I think that makes it feel more manageable in a way. It feels more exciting, it feels more varied, and you don't ever feel like you're in a routine for very long, which theatre can feel like. You know, part of what we do is creating, but when you have a long contract, you're actually being hired to recreate something over and over and over again, and that's a very different skill. So I think this is the best of both worlds, when we get to travel to different cities and theatres with a show that the show stays the same. That's the constant part, but the life every day, the routine is always changing, and that's very special, I think.
Indeed, it's a privilege, isn't it? Yeah, we're getting to travel the world and do what we love. Like, that's such a privilege. I'm honestly thrilled to be here. So far, I've only been here a week, but as Nadim says, the weather, my goodness, the sunshine, the warmth. I've just come from Melbourne, which was winter. So it's lovely. The people have been so kind, and I can't wait to get into this huge theatre and feel that response and that, because you feel it, don't you, when it's such a huge amount of people. So that's going to be so thrilling. I think for me, one of, like, a special place was performing at the Opera House in Sydney, purely because I'm from New Zealand, and so it meant that lots of my family and friends who haven't been able to see it in Europe or the UK, they could come over. And so that was a really special time, because they could just pop over and see me. So that was really lovely. But as Nadim says, like, each different city, each different venue, each different culture, language, it's just, we were really lucky to experience this lifestyle, aren't we? It's so unusual and challenging, but I think it makes us richer for it, doesn't it? We're so lucky, yeah.
I'm so glad for you. And I didn't ask you, did you try Bulgarian cuisine?
Tonight.
Okay.
When I was here in April, we had 1 day off. And on that day, a group of us went into the mountains to do a vineyard tour and wine tasting. And when we were there, we had, at the end of the first vineyard, we had a very traditional Bulgarian meal, and it was amazing. You know, obviously, as I said earlier, the weather was like this. We were in the mountains, drinking Bulgarian wine, eating, I think we tried 2 or 3 different, we asked the guide to just order for us, you know, but it was delicious. And we need to make, I mean, you're going tonight, that's great. But near the theatre, the problem is there's so much good Italian food, because you do pizza and pasta very well here. So have to walk a bit further to find some Bulgarian places. But if you know any good ones, you have to tell us. You can give us your recommendation.
I'll give it to you later. Okay. And anything last to say, like to conclude our conversation, or to say something to the audience?
Well, thank you for supporting us, and for supporting the arts, and for coming along and sharing with us on this beautiful story. We just can't wait to tell our story, right? It's a really important one, and so thank you for coming. Yeah.
Kind of related to how we started the interview, just to say how special it feels to be wanted back somewhere. You know, it's the nicest thing. We spent the last year imagining that we would be going to a different country at this point, but then to hear from the producers that there was demand for a return to Sophia, it was really, really nice. And it means that when we go on stage for the first show on Thursday, we will hopefully feel that energy from the audience, and they will feel from us that we're very grateful to be here and to be asked back. It's very special.
Thank you so much as well, and we're looking forward to seeing you again on stage from August 29th to September the 5th. Thank you.